The grand iron gates of Kim Mansion swung open, revealing a sprawling estate bathed in soft golden lights. The driveway stretched endlessly, lined with perfectly trimmed hedges and a fountain in the center. Taehyung stepped out of the car, his sharp black suit accentuating his broad shoulders and intimidating aura. Won followed closely behind, her eyes briefly scanning the grandeur before resting on the massive double doors of the mansion. As they entered, the staff immediately lined up, bowing respectfully. A kind-looking maid stepped forward and greeted them warmly. "Welcome, Mrs. Kim," she said with a genuine smile, bowing slightly. Won nodded sweetly, her lips curling into a polite smile. "Thank you." "Please, just call me Won." The maid's face lit up at Won's kindness. "Of course, Won. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask." Before Taehyung could say anything, one of his assistants hurried over and whispered something in his ear. Taehyung's expression hardened, his usual cold demeanor returning. He turned to the maid. "Show her to my room," he said curtly before walking away without another word. Won followed the maid down the long, elegant corridor. The older woman's kindness made the tension in the air a little more bearable. "You have such a beautiful smile," the maid said as they reached the room. Won chuckled softly. "Thank you, and you have such a warm heart. It's nice to meet someone so kind here." The maid beamed at her response, opening the door to reveal a spacious bedroom with a modern yet cozy aesthetic. Won stepped in, admiring the soft lighting and comfortable ambience. "Feel free to call me anytime if you need anything, dear," the maid said before leaving. Won smiled again and nodded. "Thank you, I will." Taehyung returned after a few hours, his tie loosened and his expression weary. He opened the door to find Won sitting cross-legged on the bed, dressed in comfy clothes, scrolling through her phone with an air of calm indifference. The contrast between her relaxed demeanor and his chaotic day caught him off guard. He cleared his throat, drawing her attention. "Sorry about earlier," he muttered. Won looked up and smiled faintly. "No worries." Taehyung hesitated for a moment before stepping further into the room. His tone shifted back to his usual coldness. "I want to be honest with you. Don't expect anything from this marriage. I was forced into it." Won raised an eyebrow, giving him a look that was a mix of amusement and disbelief. "What should I do?" she asked sarcastically, tilting her head. Taehyung frowned. "What? Anything else left to say?" she asked nonchalantly, placing her phone on the nightstand. "I'm serious," Taehyung said, his frustration evident. "I have a girlfriend." "It's better if you mind your own business." Won stared at him, unimpressed. "Are you done?" she asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "What?" Taehyung blinked, confused by her reaction. Won stood up from the bed, crossing her arms over her chest. Her calm demeanor vanished, replaced by an authoritative presence that caught him off guard. "Listen to me, KIMTAEHYUNG," she began, her voice steady but firm. "When I'm married to you, you respect me. I'm not some poor little innocent girl who's going to cry after hearing this crap." She stepped closer, her eyes locking with his. "I am Lee Won. I demand respect." "You respect me. I respect you. If you're bad, I'm worse." Taehyung was speechless. He wasn't expecting this fiery response. "And another thing," Won continued, her tone sharper now. "Your girlfriend stays out of this house as long as I'm here as Mrs. KIMTAEHYUNG. She's not allowed here. And you don't meet her in public either. You behave yourself. I behave myself." Taehyung finally found his voice, albeit weakly. "You can't tell me," Won interrupted him with a smirk. "Oh, and just because you have a girlfriend and I don't have a boyfriend doesn't mean I can't get one. I believe in equality." What Taehyung's voice was laced with disbelief as he took a step back, his confidence shaken. "And," she added, narrowing her eyes, "keep your mafia stuff out of this house, please and thank you." With that, she turned on her heel and climbed back into bed. She pulled the covers over herself and yawned dramatically. Now, if you don't mind, turn off the lights. I'm sleepy. Good night. Taehyung stood there, his mouth slightly open, utterly stunned. He'd never met anyone who dared to speak to him like that, let alone with such composure and confidence. As he turned off the lights, he glanced at the woman lying in bed, already settling in as if she owned the place. For the first time in a long time, KIMTAEHYUNG didn't know what to say. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as YN descended the stairs, yawning and stretching lazily. Her steps were unhurried, and her hair was slightly messy from the long, restful sleep she'd finally indulged in after an exhausting day. As she reached the living room, she spotted Taehyung sitting comfortably in his armchair, legs crossed like a king, a glass of wine in hand, and a newspaper in the other. In's brow furrowed as she approached. Who drinks wine this early in the morning? She asked, voice laced with disbelief. Taehyung glanced up from his paper with a dry, good morning. YN raised an eyebrow and, without hesitation, took the glass from his hand and sipped it. Not bad, she said nonchalantly, licking her lips. Taehyung rolled his eyes. How polite of you, unfazed, YN quipped. Had breakfast yet? Not yet, he replied flatly, turning his attention back to the paper. Ah, YN said in a mockingly sweet voice, leaning closer. Were you waiting for me? Taehyung's jaw tightened as he shot her a look. In your dreams, YN gasped dramatically, my dreams. Oh no, I haven't had bad dreams since forever. Taehyung gave her an incredulous look, his expression screaming, what is wrong with this woman? Before he could retort, the maid approached. Sir, madam, breakfast is ready. YN turned to the maid with a bright smile. Oh, good morning. What's for breakfast? The maid listed the items with a polite tone, clearly charmed by YN's friendliness. Lovely, YN beamed. We're coming. Taehyung stood up, his movements slow and deliberate. After you, your highness, he said sarcastically, gesturing toward the dining room. YN grinned and shrugged. Of course, my slave. Taehyung froze mid-step. What? She gave him a sly look and continued toward the dining table. However, she stopped abruptly when a shrill, overly sweet voice echoed from the entrance, baby. In turned around slowly, her expression immediately souring as she spotted a petite woman running toward Taehyung with open arms. It was Yeri, clinging to him like a koala. Taehyung immediately tried to peel her off, his face a mix of irritation and awkwardness. Behave, Taehyung muttered under his breath, pushing her back. In crossed her arms, watching the scene with a mix of disbelief and disgust. Her lips curled in distaste as Yeri pouted dramatically, baby, why are you being so mean to me? Yeri whined, batting her lass, baby. YN echoed, her tone dripping with mockery. You mean to tell me she is your so-called girlfriend? Before Taehyung could reply, Yeri stepped forward with a smug look. Yes, I am. I'm Kang Yeri, his girlfriend. YN tilted her head, looking her up and down with a cold stare. Really, wow, double quotes, she said dryly. So, tell me, husband, what was your helplessness? Her voice was sharp, dripping with sarcasm. Taehyung cleared his throat awkwardly, but Yeri was livid. Excuse me. How dare you, and cut her off with a bored tone. Oh, I dare, sweetheart. Shall I worship you now or later? She smirked, crossing her arms. Yeri gasped. How can you talk to me like that? With my mouth, YN replied, sticking her tongue out childishly, fuming. Yeri clung to Taehyung again. Baby, she's being so mean to me. YN rolled her eyes. Cartoon, she muttered under her breath before striding toward Yeri. Without warning, she grabbed Yeri by the hair, yanking her back. Yeri screamed dramatically, flailing like a fish out of water. Guards, YN barked. 2 guards immediately entered the room. Throw this trash out of my house, YN ordered coldly, shoving Yeri toward them. Baby, no, stop them, Yeri wailed, clutching onto Taehyung, who stepped back and raised his hands as if he wanted no part of the drama. Taehyung glanced at the guards. Did you hear my wife? Do it. Baby, no, stop them, Yeri wailed, clutching onto Taehyung, who stepped back and raised his hands as if he wanted no part of the drama. Taehyung glanced at the guards. "Did you hear my wife? Do it." Yeri's screams grew louder as the guards dragged her out, her voice echoing down the hall. "Nuu baby, please." As the door slammed shut, the house fell silent again. YN turned to Taehyung, giving him a pointed look before heading to the table. Taehyung followed slowly, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Watching his fiery wife handle the situation with such boldness was oddly fascinating. She's interesting, he thought to himself, sitting down across from her. Not bad at all. The dining table was lavishly set with an array of breakfast dishes, and both Taehyung and In were quietly indulging in their meal. The only sounds were the clinking of plates and the occasional sip of coffee until YN suddenly burst out laughing. Taehyung paused mid-bite, raising an eyebrow as he looked at her. "Are you possessed?" he asked, his voice flat but tinged with curiosity. YN shook her head, unable to contain her laughter. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes as she tried to regain her composure. "Crazy woman," Taehyung muttered, returning to his food. No, YN managed between giggles, waving her hand. "I just have a question," Taehyung sighed, setting his chopsticks down. How could you let her call you baby?" YN asked, her face lighting up with amusement as she reenacted Yeri's exaggerated pout. Taehyung groaned, running a hand down his face. "She doesn't." "Oh, come on," YN said, her laugh turning into a full-blown cackle. "You, with your macho don't talk to me. I'm a Mafia King attitude." And then baby, she doubled over, laughing harder. Taehyung signed the air as if to dismiss her teasing. "She only did that overacting for you." In wiped her eyes, still laughing. "But baby," she repeated, emphasizing the word as if it were the most absurd thing she'd ever heard. Taehyung shot her a withering look, his patience clearly thinning. Okay, YN said, sitting up straighter and feigning seriousness. "Sorry, but can I ask something else?" He gave her a pointed look. "Do I have a choice?" "No, seriously," YN said, her voice turning curious. Taehyung sighed heavily, leaning back in his chair. "What now?" YN tilted her head. "Why her?" "You couldn't find anyone else. Like, why her?" "Don't take too much interest in my life," Taehyung warned, picking up his chopsticks again. "But I'm curious," YN said, leaning on the table with a mischievous grin. "I said don't," Taehyung replied firmly. "You know," YN continued, ignoring his warning, "if you ever met my ex, you'd understand why we dated. Like, buffed up chest, ABS, tattoos, piercings, he was sexy." Taehyung froze, his chopsticks pausing midair. His grip tightened on them, and his jaw visibly clenched. The YN seemed oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. "He was the most handsome guy in my high school," YN added, a nostalgic smile gracing her lips. "Enough praising your ex," Taehyung cut in sharply, his tone colder than before. "Focus on your food." YN blinked at him, then smirked. "Oh, don't be jealous, husband. You're also handsome and good-looking, which is why I'm so confused." Taehyung arched a brow, confused about what? "Like her, YN said dramatically, throwing her hands in the air before bursting into laughter again. The sound of chopsticks clattering against the table interrupted her as Taehyung dropped them, his expression dark and unreadable. Okay, sorry," YN said quickly, raising her hands in surrender. "I won't do it again, I promise." She gave him an apologetic smile, her tone softer. "I'm quiet now." "Let's eat." Taehyung watched her for a moment, his sharp gaze lingering before he picked up his utensils again. As they resumed their meal in silence, YN bit back another smile, sneaking glances at her brooding husband. Interesting, she thought to herself, her mind already concocting ways to get under his skin again. Taehyung sat in his grand leather chair, immersed in paperwork, the sharp lines of his suit emphasizing his commanding aura. His office was pristine and intimidating, much like the man himself. Across the desk, Hymin leaned casually against the edge, a mischievous smirk playing on his lips. "So why her, Tae?" Hymin asked, laughter bubbling in his voice. Taehyung groaned, rubbing his temples. "Enough. First, my wife, now you?" Hymin chuckled, his eyes twinkling. My wife," he teased, mimicking Taehyung's deep voice. Taehyung shot him a glare. "Hymin, okay, I won't do it again," Hymin said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. His grin widened as he added, "But seriously, your wife seems ... interesting. I should meet her properly sometime." Taehyung leaned back in his chair, his lips curving into a small, sarcastic smile. "She's nothing like what I thought." Hymin raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. "Oh, I told you, don't judge a book by its cover. You said she'd be a spoiled brat, throwing tantrums every second." Taehyung sighed, his mind briefly replaying the fiery attitude and confidence YN had displayed. "Yeah, well, she's not. Turns out, she's more like medicine, a bitter pill to swallow." Hymin laughed loudly, clapping his hands. "Medicine? How? More like the antidote to your bratty behavior, Mr. Mafia King." Taehyung shook his head, rolling his eyes. "Haha, not funny, no, but seriously," Hymin said, leaning forward. "She's the one for you, and let's be honest, this whole Yeri thing. Come on, man, you don't love her. She's been draining your bank account since day one." Taehyung's expression hardened for a moment before he smirked. "I need her for something. As soon as it's done, she'd be out of the picture." Hymin studied his friend carefully. "And your wife?" Taehyung's smirk deepened, his dark eyes glinting. "I'm not an idiot, Hymin. I won't let her go. She's going to stick with me." Hymin's eyes widened slightly, a knowing smile creeping onto his face. "I can smell the love brewing already." Taehyung scoffed, leaning forward on the desk. "Too bad I can smell something else, obsession." Hymin shook his head, chuckling as he straightened up. "Time will tell, my friend. Time will tell." Taehyung didn't respond, his mind already wandering. As Hymin left the office with a grin, Taehyung's thoughts lingered on YN's fiery gaze, her sharp tongue, and that smirk she gave him when she had the upper hand. Obsession, he thought with a smirk of his own. Maybe Hymin's not entirely wrong. The sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of YN's sleek, modern office, casting a warm glow on the minimalist decor. In sat comfortably in her chair, her legs crossed and a playful smile tugging at her lips as she sipped on her coffee. Across from her, Mr. Kim, Taehyung's father, leaned back in the chair, laughing heartily. "I can't believe it, baby," Mr. Kim said between chuckles. It sounded so cringe. YN joined in his laughter, shaking her head. It did sound cringe. "But you know, seeing him flustered is worth it." Mr. Kim wiped a tear from the corner of his eye, still laughing. YNA. Trust me, he's a brat. Always has been. But he's no idiot. She'd be out of the picture soon enough. YN leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "Oh, I know. He has no feelings for her. I don't even understand why he's dating her in the first place. It's baffling." Mr. Kim's expression shifted, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Well, I've got some info. Let's just say it's happening soon." YN hummed thoughtfully, a smirk forming on her lips. "Good. The sooner, the better. And don't worry about his arrogance, uncle. I can handle it. In fact," she said, leaning back with a confident glint in her eyes, "I can already feel him falling. Soon, your son will be dancing on my fingertips." Mr. Kim burst into laughter, clapping his hands. "That's my girl. Make him in. I'll love to watch every moment of it." YN chuckled, her smirk widening. "No, I will. Trust me, uncle, I will." As the two continued their light-hearted banter, the air in the room was filled with the scent of coffee and the unmistakable promise of chaos brewing in the not-so-distant future.